I remember the smell of lemon and lavender. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of day that used to feel like home. The curtains danced gently in the breeze, sunlight dripping in like honey through the window panes. I was barefoot in the kitchen, humming a song from the radio, one of those old love ballads that once made me smile. The coffee was brewing, the dog was curled at my feet, and everything should have felt right. But there was a silence I didn't recognize. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that hums in your chest like a warning. I heard the giggle first. High-pitched, familiar, too familiar. Came from the living room. I thought maybe it was the TV. But then I heard his voice, low and laughing, intimate in a way that twisted something deep inside my gut. I stepped forward, hesitant. The floor creaked beneath me like it, too, didn't want me to know what waited on the other side. When I turned the corner, I saw them. Not kissing, not touching, but the space between them told a story. Her knee brushed against his as she leaned closer, whispering something that made him laugh, that soft, private laugh he used to reserve just for me. His hand grazed her shoulder for a moment too long. Their eyes met, and in that second, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Something that didn't belong in a father-daughter bond. She looked up, startled to see me, but not guilty, just irritated, like I had interrupted something sacred. And he couldn't even meet my eyes. My throat closed. I asked, barely a whisper, "What's going on?" Silence. Then she laughed again, nervously this time. "We were just talking." But I knew. God, I knew. Everything in my body screamed the truth. Even before I saw the messages later. Even before the late-night phone calls, the weekend work trips. The change in the way he touched me. Colder, distracted, absent. In that moment, it felt like the room cracked open and swallowed me whole. I had raised that girl. From the time she was 12, broken and quiet, arms folded tight across her chest like armor. I was the one who taught her to braid her hair, who sat with her through nightmares, who cheered her on at every school recital. I was the one who told her time and again that love was real, that she was safe. And now she was here, in my living room, glowing in his attention like it belonged to her. My husband, my home, my trust. Tears didn't come. Not yet. Only stillness. Like every cell in my body was frozen in disbelief. I stood there, a ghost in my own life, watching the two people I had loved most become strangers, co-conspirators, traitors. And the worst part, it wasn't even anger that hit me first. It was grief. The kind you feel when something dies. Not with a bang, but with a betrayal so silent, so slow, that you almost don't notice until the knife's already buried deep in your back. How do you mourn something that didn't end, but changed into something unrecognizable? How do you rebuild a heart that was broken by the very hands that once promised to protect it? To be continued. Next, I'll take you back. Back to the days when love felt real. When my family was whole, or at least I thought it was. Maybe if I had looked closer, I would have seen the cracks before they turned into canyons. Before everything fell apart, our life was beautiful. Or so I believed. There were early mornings filled with quiet kisses, Sunday breakfasts where we'd laugh about nothing, and soft conversations under the weight of nightfall. Our home smelled of cinnamon in the winter, cut grass in the summer. Love to me lived in the tiny gestures, the way he'd always make my coffee just how I liked it, or how his hand would automatically reach for mine during movies. We had built something steady, something sacred, and she was part of that. I first met her at a shelter. She was a scared, silent girl, barely speaking, her eyes hollow like someone who had seen too much too soon. Her mother had died, her father was in prison. I couldn't walk away. Something in me cracked open when I looked at her, like my soul had recognized hers. We became her foster family that year. But love doesn't ask for paperwork. I loved her the way a mother loves her child. Fully, instinctively, endlessly. I taught her how to use mascara, how to write a resume, how to heal. I watched her bloom. She became my shadow, my companion. We baked together, painted together, shared secrets over steaming cups of tea. She told me I was the mother she never had. I told her she was the daughter I never knew I needed. My husband, Mark, welcomed her too. At first with distance, then with warmth. He'd drive her to school, help with her math homework, cheer at her soccer games. I remember the first time she called him Dad. His eyes welled with tears. That day I felt we had built a miracle. Years passed. She grew up and so did our bond. Even after she turned 18, she never left. She said we were her family. She said she couldn't imagine life without us. And I believed her. There were family dinners, road trips, laughter around bonfires. Sometimes people would mistake her for our real daughter, and we'd just smile. I was proud of how far she'd come. Proud of the family we'd built. Of course, there were moments, small things I buried. The way her laughter sometimes changed around him. Or delicate. How she started wearing makeup only after he complimented it. How his eyes would linger for a second too long when she walked into a room in a tight dress. But I dismissed it. Had to. What was the alternative? To admit that something sacred could be twisted into something monstrous. I would tell myself, "You're being paranoid. Don't poison something good with suspicion." I told myself I was secure. That our love was real. That nothing, no one could come between us. Mark and I had plans. We were saving for a trip to Italy. Talking about downsizing the house. Maybe retiring early and living by the sea. We had dreams stitched into every part of our home. In framed pictures, shared playlists, recipes scribbled in the margins of old cookbooks. He still kissed me goodnight. Still whispered, "I love you." So how could I know those words were already slipping from his mouth to hers? How could I know that while I was planning forever, he was building an escape, with the girl I had once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms? I look back now and wonder, were there signs I missed or signs I refused to see? Because if I had admitted the cracks then, maybe the collapse wouldn't have destroyed me the way it did. But sometimes love blinds you. And sometimes the people closest to you aren't there to protect your heart. They're holding the match that will set it on fire. To be continued. Next, I'll tell you about the unraveling. How whispers turned into suspicions, and how the truth finally clawed its way into the light, leaving nothing untouched. It started with a laugh. Not just any laugh, his laugh. The kind that was once mine. He was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, leaning against the counter with a smile I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't the tired smile he gave me at bedtime. It was lighter, freer, younger. When I asked who it was, he paused. Said, "Work call." But the screen had still been lit when I passed. There was no client name. I didn't say anything that day. Because you don't accuse your husband of having an affair with a girl you raised like your daughter. Not unless you're sure. Not unless you're ready to have your world ripped apart. But something had shifted. Suddenly he was working late. She was staying with friends. The air between them in the mornings felt thick. Awkward. Choreographed. I caught him once, scrolling through old photos of her on his phone. He jumped when I walked in like a teenager hiding a secret. I asked if something was going on. He got defensive. "Are you jealous of your own daughter?" The words hit like a slap. Daughter. That's what she was supposed to be. But doubt clung to me like a second skin. I started noticing things I had trained myself to ignore. The way they'd exchange glances during dinner. The way she seemed to glow under his gaze. The way his touch, once warm and instinctive, became mechanical, polite. The final crack came when I borrowed his laptop. Innocently. For a recipe. A notification popped up on the corner of the screen. "Can't stop thinking about last night. Still feel you everywhere." Froze. The message was from her. First I thought, no, this must be someone else. Mistake. Cruel joke. But then I clicked, and there it was. A thread of messages stretching back months. Photos. Plans. Confessions. They spoke of me like I was a distant memory. She doesn't suspect a thing. I feel guilty sometimes. But it feels so right. She raised me like a daughter. Funny how life works. The air left my lungs. My body stopped functioning like it knew how. I collapsed to the floor with the laptop still glowing beside me, their secret exposed like an open wound. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn it all down. But all I did was sit there, in silence. How do you move when your reality shifts beneath you? How do you grieve the death of a marriage and the betrayal of a daughter? All in the same breath. When they came home, I said nothing. I watched her brush past me, humming. Watched him pour a glass of wine like everything was normal. And I realized something terrifying. They didn't feel guilty. Not really. They were living in a world they had built together. And I was the ghost haunting the corners. I started questioning everything. Was every hug from her a lie? Was every kiss from him just an act? Was I ever loved, or just convenient? I told myself I needed proof. I needed closure. But deep down, I already knew the truth. And it was colder than anything I'd ever felt. To be continued. Next, I'll tell you about the unraveling aftermath. The desperate attempts to save something already dead. The lies they told to keep me quiet. And the moment I finally chose myself over the illusion. I didn't leave. Not at first. Because love doesn't let go just because it's bleeding. The morning after I discovered the messages, I still made breakfast. Scrambled eggs. Toast. His coffee the way he liked it, 2 sugars, no cream. I don't know why. Habit maybe. Or hope. He walked in like nothing had happened. Kissed my cheek like he hadn't kissed her somewhere else just days before. I stood there silent, holding a cup of betrayal in my shaking hands. That was the beginning of my unraveling. But before I could leave, I had to try. Or maybe I needed them to confess. I needed one of them to look me in the eyes and say, "I'm sorry." I needed something real from the people who had faked love in front of me for so long. So I confronted him that night. We sat on the porch, moonlight spilling across the wooden floorboards like a witness. I asked him simply, "Is there something you need to tell me?" He blinked, looked away, then said, "You've been acting paranoid." I laughed. That ugly, hollow laugh you never think you'll hear from yourself. I told him I read the messages, that I knew. And then he changed. He didn't cry. He didn't apologize. He blamed me. "You were always so busy with her, maybe I just felt neglected." Neglected. As if the love I gave wasn't enough. As if my motherhood was the very weapon he used to justify his betrayal. He turned the crime into my punishment. And for a moment I believed him. Maybe I had loved her too fiercely. Maybe I had made room for her that he thought belonged to him. When I confronted her, it was worse. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She said, "It just happened." Like it was weather. Like they were both leaves in a storm they had no control over. She called it a connection. Said she hadn't meant to hurt me. Said she loved me still. I wanted to slap her. But my hands just dropped to my sides. Useless. Instead I whispered, "You were a child in my arms. I held you like my own." And she said, "I never asked you to." That cut deeper than anything. Oh, just stayed. We tried therapy. We tried space. He promised it was over. She moved out briefly. Came back weeks later, saying she had nowhere else to go. And I let her. Because I still remembered the little girl who clung to my waist that first night at the shelter. But the house was no longer a home. Every corner echoed. Every smile was fake. He touched me like I was made of glass. Something fragile, something breakable, but never something desired. And I began to fade. I'd stare at my reflection and barely recognize the woman in the mirror. My laughter disappeared. My appetite dissolved. Nights were sleepless, days were numb. And in every silence, my mind screamed the same question. What did I do wrong? I bent myself into forgiveness. I rewrote every memory to make room for his lies. But no matter how many second chances I gave them, the weight of their betrayal never lifted. Then came the final drop, the moment. He left his phone on the table. She texted, "Miss you. Same time tomorrow." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply stood up, walked to the bedroom and began to pack. Because staying wasn't healing. It was dying. And I was done being the martyr in their love story. To be continued. Next, I'll take you to the moment everything broke for good. The confrontation that shattered the mask, the fear of losing everything, and the terrifying power of choosing to walk away. I didn't plan to confront them together. But life, in its cruel choreography, gave me that moment, wrapped in quiet rage and fluorescent light. It was a Wednesday evening. He said he had a late meeting. She told me she was at a study group. But I knew. I had stopped hoping, stopped waiting. Instead, I followed. The bar wasn't even discreet. It was our bar. The one where we'd celebrated our anniversary 3 years ago. The one with the brass lamps and the tiny jazz stage tucked into the corner. The one with my initials carved under the table near the back. And there they were, seated at that same table, laughing. He held her hand. She leaned in close. Her lips grazed his jaw. No secrecy, no shame. They weren't hiding anymore. Because in their minds, I was already gone. I don't remember walking across the room. I don't remember breathing. Only the weight of betrayal pressing into my chest with every step. They didn't see me at first. But when they did, it was like time stopped. He froze, mouth half open, as if trying to shape an apology he hadn't practiced. She paled, her body stiffening like a child caught with blood on her hands. I looked at them, not as a wife, not as a mother, but as a woman. A woman who had given her soul to people who set it on fire. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't whisper. He spoke. I hope it was worth it. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand, and for the first time he obeyed. I gave you everything, I said. Both of you. My trust, my loyalty, my love. And you took it and fed on it like wolves. She stood, stammering something. It's not what you think, or maybe we didn't mean. I laughed. You didn't mean to fall in love with your mother's husband? The silence after that was thunder. People were watching. I didn't care. Let them see the truth. Let them witness the death of pretense. I took off my wedding ring, the one he gave me under cherry blossoms, held it in my hand, then dropped it in his drink. He flinched as it sank, tiny bubbles rising from the bottom of the glass like ghosts. I don't want revenge, I said, my voice calm. I want freedom. Then I turned to her. You were my daughter. I would have died for you. And you chose him. I hope he breaks you exactly the way he broke me. And then I left. I didn't look back. In the parking lot, the night air hit me like truth. Cold, brutal, freeing. My hands shook. My legs nearly gave out. But for the first time in months, I was mine again. I drove home, packed the rest of my things, left the keys on the kitchen table. I didn't write a note. There was nothing left to say. My world had burned, but I had walked through the fire and survived. And survival, I realized, is its own kind of power. To be continued. Next, I'll tell you about the healing, the quiet days after the storm, the struggle to breathe again, and the rediscovery of a woman I had buried beneath years of sacrifice. Grief doesn't end when the door closes behind you. It lingers, in the smallest moments. In the quiet of a rented apartment that smells of unfamiliar detergent. In the way your toothbrush stands alone in the cup. In the haunting echo of your own name spoken aloud, with no one around to answer. But grief, as I learned, is also fertile ground. For growth, for rebirth, for something that resembles peace. The first few weeks were survival. I slept too much or not at all. Ate cereal straight from the box. Let dishes pile in the sink. Sometimes I'd find myself curled up on the bathroom floor, unable to remember how I got there. But somewhere in that stillness, a shift began. I started therapy. Not for them. For me. The first time I said it out loud. My husband had an affair with the girl I raised like my daughter. My voice cracked. My therapist just nodded. She didn't flinch. Didn't try to fix it. She just held the space. And I began to heal. Slowly, painfully, but honestly. I journaled every day. Wrote letters I'd never send. Cried in grocery stores. Laughed at old memories and hated myself for it. I let myself feel. That was the hardest part. Learning to feel without turning it into blame. I joined a pottery class. Something about shaping clay with trembling hands. It felt like reclaiming control. Each bowl, each crooked vase was imperfect. And perfectly mine. I reconnected with old friends. People I had neglected during the years I played wife and mother so well that I forgot I was also me. I said no more. Took up space. I stopped apologizing for things I didn't break. They tried to reach out once, twice. He sent flowers. He sent a letter. I never opened it. Because closure doesn't come from the people who shattered you. Comes from within. One morning I stood in front of the mirror, really stood. Looked at the woman there. Eyes darker, wiser. Shoulders squared from carrying too much. And I said aloud, I love you. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a grand cinematic moment. But it was real. And it was mine. In time, I moved into a little house with ivy creeping up the side. Quiet. I planted lavender out front. It reminded me of the home I once had. And the one I now chose to build. This time, I wasn't building for someone else. No more waiting for someone to make me feel seen. No more shrinking. I learned that love is not sacrifice. Love is not endurance. Real love, begins with you. And one day maybe I'll love again. But I'm not searching. Because I found her. The version of me who was buried beneath their lies. And she's enough. To be continued. In the final chapter, I'll share the truth I carry with me now. The lessons that came from betrayal, the questions that still linger, and the strength that rises when you choose to live unbroken. It's strange how betrayal carves its initials into your bones. Not always with fury. Sometimes it lingers like a whisper. Soft, cruel, unforgettable. There are days I still wake up thinking I hear his voice in the kitchen. There are moments when I scroll past a photo of her. Younger, innocent, and wonder if there was ever a version of her that truly loved me. I don't know the answer. Maybe I never will. But here's what I do know. I survived. And not just in the sense of getting through the days. I mean truly survived. The kind of survival where you dig yourself out from under the rubble, not just to breathe again but to build again. There was a time when my identity was wrapped around being a good wife. A nurturing mother. Protector. But in protecting them I abandoned myself. What I learned is this. Love without boundaries isn't noble. Dangerous. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing your own peace over someone else's poison. And trust. Trust is a gift, not a debt. For the longest time, I thought healing would come when they apologized. But the truth is, I never needed their sorry. I needed my own permission to move on. I don't need to understand why they did what they did. I don't need to know if they're still together. Because my story didn't end when theirs began. Changed. Grew. And from the ashes of everything they took from me, I built something unshakable. A love for myself that does not beg. A future that doesn't rely on anyone's approval to exist. And a heart, still tender but no longer naive. To the woman I used to be. You were enough. Even when they made you feel invisible, discarded, replaced. You were always enough. To the woman I am now. You are not bitter. You are better. And to you, the one listening right now, feeling the weight of betrayal in your own chest. Let me tell you this. You are not alone. Your pain is real. Your confusion is valid. And your healing, no matter how messy, is deserved. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to choose yourself. Every day. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away from the fire and never look back. So let me leave you with a question. A question I asked myself again and again, until it no longer broke me, but rebuilt me. Would you ever forgive someone who shattered your heart? While looking you in the eyes and calling it love. If this story resonated with you, share your truth in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear it, or who might finally feel seen because of you. And if you're in the middle of your own storm, hold on. The sun will rise. And when it does, it will rise for you. Broken heart,